All right, hello, I'm Nature Jodi. This year's library theme is Imagine Your Story. So I'm going to have you imagine a story about birds, and you're going to hear about my story today. Now imagine if you woke up one morning and you didn't hear the birds chirping or singing. Or imagine if you went outside in your yard and you looked and you didn't see a single bird in the trees. You didn't see a single bird flying in the sky. Imagine if that happened. Imagine, we're going to play some bird calls. You're hearing it now. Imagine if you did not hear the bird calls. And suddenly, there was nothing. No sound, no sight. Imagine not seeing birds anywhere, not hearing the sound of the birds anywhere. Well, that almost happened in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Imagine the story about the birds. You see my hat that I'm wearing? You're probably thinking, that is a silly, crazy hat. Why am I wearing a hat with dead birds on it? Do I really look silly? Do I look professional? Do I look neat? Well, a long time ago, women loved to wear hats. They wore hats to church. They wore hats walking down the street. Hats were the thing. But the women did not like the plain hats. They wanted to make their hats fancier. So how could they make their hats fancier? Well, they said, well, there's beautiful birds, beautiful feathers out there. Why don't we get some feathers and decorate our hats, our fancy hats? Now remember, women wear hats all the way up to nowadays. But back then they wore them, you didn't go out the house without a hat on your head. So we have some beautiful birds in the United States and overseas. And I'm going to show you a few posters of them so you can see some of these. Now look at this. Look at that tail on that bird there. See that feather? Look at this bird with the curly hair and that one that's brightly colored and long. How about these ones? I know you've seen some of these. The peacock, the spoonbill, flamingos, all those beautifully colored birds. Well, these had feathers that were attractive to the ladies that wanted to decorate their hats. Here's another one. Check out the tail on that bird. Really beautiful. This one is a rainbow bunting. We have those in the U.S. Beautiful bird. Check out this one. Look at that headdress on it. Pretty cool. This is the one I call like the Rastafarian bird. He's got like hippie hair right there. See his beautiful rainbow colors? This is a pigeon, believe it or not. And when I saw this picture online, they were actually selling the feathers for $91 for this bird. Look at the intricate design on these feathers on the top of that bluebird's head. And the blue jay, isn't that a pretty bird we have too? And how about this one? Look at that one with a long tail, birds of paradise. Beautiful, beautiful birds that we have. So these birds had lovely feathers that the ladies wanted for their hats. So how would we get feathers for our hats? Well, you would probably have to catch a bird first. Then you would have to get the feathers off the bird somehow. But don't the birds need feathers to fly? Yeah, yes. They need feathers to fly. So after you would take the feathers off the birds, what do you think would happen? They'd die. The bird would die. Well, this was a trend. Do you know what trend means? Something popular for the time period, like talking teddy bears, slinkies, bell-bottom pants, things like that. That's a trend. The trend was women to wear feathers in their hats. And so they went crazy and they started ordering and buying feathers to decorate their hats. They started with the beautiful feathers I showed you earlier, and they started decorating their hats. But that was not enough. A little bit more time, and they wanted more than just feathers. So they got heads, tails, and then eventually a whole entire bird or a bird's nest on their hat. On this poster, there's an article in the paper that a person was walking down the road in New York in 1886, and they counted 700 hats. And on the 700 hats, 525 of them were topped by feathers or birds. 525 from just somebody walking down the road. Now, they wanted the feathers, they wanted the whole birds on their head. Now, they would probably stink or get so big they couldn't balance on them. But that was the trend then. But it was also a very sorrowful time, very sad time, because some of the birds were killed. Here are women in their hats. This is a red-tailed hawk. You know red-tailed hawks right now are protected birds? There's a red-tailed hawk on that lady's hat. How about this hat? This is a burrowing owl. That's also a protected bird now. There's a burrowing owl on this lady's head. That's the way the trend was going. They wanted to wear these. And while they were doing that, birds were being killed all over the place, all over the world. See egrets? Most of you know an egret because they're found around water. And they have these beautiful white feathers. Well, you see these two ladies? They have egret feathers in their hat. Here's a whole bird. Here's another whole bird on a hat. They started adding eggs and nests and body parts of the birds and whole birds. You see this one? You see this beautiful hummingbird? It has a funny looking tail, long thin tail with just a spot of a feather on the bottom. Well, does this lady's hat look familiar? Yes, it does. That's the tail of that beautiful hummingbird. She has eggs and duck feathers in her hat. All the way up to nowadays you can find hats like this with little peacock feathers or turkey feathers or things like that. Well, this was happening so much around the world, and it was killing the birds. People were selling the feathers. I'm going to give you another example here. Right here's another one. A single 1892 order of feathers by a London dealer included 6,000 birds of paradise, 40,000 hummingbirds, 360,000 East Indian bird feathers. In 1902, there was an auction in London, and they sold 1,608,030 ounce packages of heron feathers. Each ounce of heron feathers, a plume, required you to kill 4 herons. 192,960 herons killed in that 1 year because the ladies wanted birds on their hats. They wanted to be fashionable. They wanted to look beautiful. Here's some more whole bird pictures. She has a whole bird of a crow. And she's got beautiful birds that people actually have as pets now, like cockatiels. And here's a picture of a factory selling feathers. Look at all those bins with feathers in there. This was horrible. Imagine how many birds were killed just for a fancy hat that the ladies could wear. And men wore them too, by the way. They wore their top hats and they had game birds on their heads, like ducks, doves, pheasants, things like that, turkey, all that on their hats. So not only did the women wear them, the men wore them. And you might can imagine what would happen. Do you think this is the end of the story?
No.
No, this is not the end of the story. Let's find out a little bit more. I brought a book today that I'm going to read a little bit of for you. This is called She's Wearing a Dead Bird on Her Head by Catherine Lasky. Harriet Hemingway was a very proud, proper Boston lady. She never talked with her mouth full, but one day she almost did. She was standing at the parlor window with her maid, and she just bit into a jam cookie when she looked out the window and saw a lady. There's a dead bird on her head. She's wearing a dead bird on her head. The feathers on the ladies' hats were becoming more and more popular. At first, hats had been decorated with just feathers, and then designers began to add wings, bodies, tails, until women had whole birds perched on their heads in hats. She squinted at the hat and said, "I believe that's an Arctic tern." And she said, "Oh yes, it looks ready to fly away, but it never will." Harriet felt that she had to do something about that. Huge populations from birds, egrets, pheasants, owls, warblers, were being slaughtered for hat decoration. None were spared, not even the lowly pigeon. But what could she do? Women at that time in 1896 had no power. They could not vote. They had husbands who made decisions for them and wouldn't allow them to make decisions for themselves. Some women were not even allowed to read newspapers. Harriet's husband was not like that. He did not treat her this way. But she and the other women like her wanted to change things for all the women. She wanted to do something for the birds. Fashion was killing birds as well as killing women's chances to vote and be listened to. For who would actually listen to a woman with a dead bird on her head? This senseless slaughter for silly fashion needed to be stopped. If it was not stopped, in a few years, some birds with the prettiest feathers would be dead, extinct. You know what extinct means? Forever gone. Do you know any extinct birds? Dodo bird, passenger pigeon, those are extinct birds. Even our beautiful bald eagle, that almost went into extinction. And a lot of it was due to this. So Miss Harriet said, "I must call my cousin Minna." Click-clack, her cousin Minna was walking along to meet Harriet and have a great meeting with her, a very important meeting. Her eyes were bright, and she was looking around for the yellow finch's wings that she saw every winter. Their quick golden flight made her very happy and joyful. Click, click, click. She could not be late for this tea at Miss Harriet's. It was very important. All of a sudden, she stopped right in her tracks. She did see a pair of golden, beautiful wings, but they did not have a head. They did not have a body. They were pinned to the crown of a lady's hat, and a swirl of egret feathers were also on the hat. "Revolting," Minna said. "Me?" said the fashionable lady. You heartless creature! That bird should not be slaughtered and killed just to make you feel pretty. Ah! When Minna got into the parlor, she stormed in and said, "Well, Harriet, from Arlington Street to Clarendon, 3 egrets, 1 marabou, 2 grebes, 1 golden finch, and a hummingbird." "Oh no, Minna!" "Oh yes, Harriet, perched in full flight on a bunch of silk roses with a veil on the hat. Disgusting, revolting, nauseating, vile." The words flew through the air. "Let's get down to business. Do you have a book? We need to do something about this." Do you think that's the end of the story? No, there is more to the story, and I won't leave you hanging, but if you do want to get this book, one of your local libraries will probably have it, where you can read the full story. But the women actually did do something about it. They formed the Audubon Society, which a lot of people are familiar with. John Audubon made beautiful bird pictures from him going all over the world. And that was the first meeting, official meeting of the Audubon Society. Now, the ladies had to have men to help them pass the laws because they didn't have any rights during that time. So they passed laws on people forbidden to wear bird feathers and birds and dead birds on their hats. But people still did it. So they tried to think of something they could do to make that come to a complete full stop. And they realized that they could get the person that was buying the feathers, killing the birds, and selling them to people. And so that's what they did. And it became against the law to sell any feathers or any dead birds for your hat. So that's what these brave women did back then. Now we can thank them because now we can hear our beautiful, lovely bird sounds, which I'm going to let play the rest of the time. And for you to remember this story, I have a little craft for you to do. And it only requires a few things that you probably have at home, or you can get from the Dollar Tree, or you can get from craft stores, anything like that. I'm going to come over here so I can show you what you need. Piece of construction paper, or if you have cardstock or anything like that. And I'm actually going to do the craft right here so you can see it step by step what to do. You're going to fold this in half like that. And you're going to use a crayon or a marker or a pencil. And you're going to kind of draw a picture like this. I'm going to show you how to do it. You're going to start at the folded end here. And you're going to make a beak, a head, and then you're going to take the wing all the way up to here. All the way up to this one. And then you're going to make like a little cut right here. Can you see that? I used kind of a light crayon. If you want to decorate it, like make an eyeball so you know where to put the eyeball, you can put some feathers here. Thank you. Let's trace that over so you can see it better. These are neon crayons, I just realized. That's probably why they're so light. You see that there? You need a pair of scissors, and you're going to cut right here. And just follow your line that you decorated. Go up. And don't forget this little cut here because you have to make the back end of the bird. So you see how it kind of looks like this. You got your googly eyes. They come in little packs. You have this. Pick a googly eye. I have some crazy looking ones here that look like monster eyes, and I have bird looking eyes. And you're going to take your glue on it, unless you have found an adhesive one that has a sticker on the back of it. Here's the eyeball, and I'm going to put it right here. See the eyeball on my bird? And then you can get feathers. These are fake and dyed, not real bird feathers. Remember our lesson with the ladies. And you can grab any colors, like if you want yellow, you want maybe purple, pink. Open up your paper, put some glue here by the tail end. Put your feathers down in it. Fold it over till you get it dry. And it actually is like a paper airplane, so it can fly. I'm not going to throw it down because it'll lose its feathers. But that's your little craft for you to remember. Minna and Harriet, how they helped save the birds. There's a few few other books here that I have about birds. That's great blue heron, which is one of the things I spoke about, because blue herons were one of the top birds that were killed for their feathers. Herons and egrets. And here's some about nests and things. And I want to let you know, too, that bird watching is like a multi-million-dollar industry. That is the #1 recreation for people. And all thanks to these women who help, because if they did not start that Audubon Society, where would the birds be for you to see or take pictures of or look around or hear their sweetly singing voices? I love the sound of birds, even at night. The owls, the hawks, and the night birds like whippoorwills and Chuck's Will's widow and all those ones. You wouldn't hear those if it wasn't for those two brave ladies. Do you have any questions about birds?
I'm good.
All right, thanks.